Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. We're going to have a quick look at troubleshooting a test. So some of the common techniques you might want to use. So I'm going to run. So if I go, just bear with me a second. So we're going to go to the unit test project. So the difference here, if we run the acceptance test that run against Azure, you've obviously got the Azure run history and all the other stuff that goes on when you run it against Azure. So you get this kind of like infrastructure showing you what happened and all that kind of stuff. Which, when you run it locally, it's a little bit different. So there's a couple of things that you can do. The first one I want to show you is just some handy little tips for troubleshooting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go and run an individual test here from that. So from that unit test project, right? So that's going to run, and what I wanted to do is to show when the test runs. Oh, I have to debug it. I must have debugging still enabled. I'll just let that run through. Okay, so what happens with the workflow test host is behind the scenes. What we do is when you configure it at the top here, um, there's a few different options, and I'm really just using the default here. But what you can do is it sort of points to your Logic App folder, and you're telling it what Logic Apps workflows you want to run. So if we take a look just for a second, you'll see in the Logic App folder we've got all these different workflows here. You've also got your various config files as well. Now, what the test host does is, one option is you could just point it straight to this Logic App folder and run the function runtime against it, but then you're loading all of the workflows up, and you're limited to like having whatever the config settings are in that project. Now, what I think you'll find is that that'll kind of cover some scenarios, but most of the time, especially if you're doing the unit testing, you'll want to manipulate the settings to create the conditions you might find in a unit test. So some examples would be if you want to mock an endpoint that you're going to call, which we'll look at in a future video, you need to manipulate things a little bit. You want to create error conditions and stuff. So to support that, what with a default setup, what the workflow test host does is it'll actually, if we go, so in our unit tests here, you'll see in the .NET 6 folder, the framework creates this temp logic app tests folder, and every time you run a test, it'll create a new folder in here, and this is where it's copied over the details of, so in my case, if we look at the project over on the left here, it copied this echo folder, and it's copied the workflow.json into it just like it would have had in this project. But it also copies the connections, the hosts, the local settings and stuff. And that, in future tests, you'll see how that allows me to manipulate the settings a bit to suit what it is that I'm going to test. But what we do, when the function runtime runs your workflow, when your test runs, I've got it configured so that the function logs from that run, you would normally see this in the console window if you were kind of running it locally, just from like an F5 scenario. But we just get it to write these logs into this text file here. So if you ever needed to troubleshoot, you can come in and you can see all the logs in here, and you could work out kind of what was happening. So we'll see down the bottom it would have ran my workflow, and I can see the steps that would have executed and stuff. So that gives me like a lot of extra detail. If I ever need to troubleshoot a test, I've got the option of coming in here and having a look what happened.